Guest today is Sayyida Henna Babar Ali. Henna belongs to one of the most prominent business families of Pakistan. Henna is the advisor of the Consumer Division of Packages Limited, and she is the chairperson of DIC Pakistan Limited. Henna is a graduate of University of Michigan, and she's a poetess. She's won several awards in poetry. She's won the Houghton Mifflin Best Poetry Award. She's won the Best English Poet Award from the Bolan Cultural Academy, and she's won the Fatma Jinnah Gold Medal. Henna has produced a vast variety of work in Urdu and English poetry. Welcome to the show, Henna.
Thank you so much for having me here.
We are delighted. Henna, I want to ask you, as a businesswoman, have you faced any obstacles in your career? Considering the perception of patriarchy and discrimination against women that we have all over the world. So what has been your experience?
So my experience when I first joined the organization was that, here is an organization that offers a level playing field compared to other chairman of Packages Limited was the sweet Dr. Ruben Rousing. So from the very beginning, Packages in its core fundamentals has to take decisions by consensus, respect the gender balance, and in the 70s we started inducting women into the organization, which was extremely rare compared to other organizations in the country. I will not be defensive about patriarchy or try to be supportive of it. What I do feel is that it has taken me all these years to get where I am, and this would have probably happened had it been in any other organization as well. Because when you compete with other people or you compete with yourself, which is what I think I do, and you want to work with professional management and not be treated separately just because you belong to the sponsor's family, then the path up the ladder is not the spiral staircase that we see or the 45-degree angle that most HR developers try to put forward, but it's a slow and gradual process. I started working for the Packages Group or for the family business in 1988. And as for 1 year, I basically interned with the organization, and then I was put on the payroll in 1989. And like everybody else, I retired at 58 and now work on contract, even though I'm advisor to the consumer division and chairperson of Dynapon Inc. Like everybody else, I also have KPIs, targets that I need to meet. There are stretch targets, goals that have to be met, on which financial compensation is decided. And there are no favors that are. So it's a fair organization in terms of compensation, where women are not underpaid because they are women. They are paid at par with men, which is also rare because we have seen many studies, global studies, particularly from the Global Economic Forum, where they say that women generally, CEOs are compensated less than men, or women in senior positions are compensated less than men. I think this is one of the fortes of Packages Limited, that here financial compensation is gender blind.
You think are the major challenges that Pakistan faces today? And what are the few essential things that we need to do to overcome the challenges in the 21st century?
I think there are 3 or 4 major challenges that Pakistan is facing. The first challenge is the population of 220 million, which continues to grow at the rate of 2.8%. So, if this is going to be the population growth, given the economy and size of the country, we will not have enough water to drink or for agriculture or industrial purposes. We will run short of land because we are building homes in agricultural areas, we are inculcating um, urbanization at a rapid pace. The other problem I see is that if population growth rate is not stemmed and reduced, then our resources will be burdened and constrained, and it will be difficult to get this country out of the poverty trap. The second most important issue that we have is lack of education. By education, I don't mean necessarily the degrees or the qualifications that you have by obtaining those degrees. It is life skills, it is the skill to analyze problems through critical thinking, the development of the human mind or the brain, and analytical skills, which are very important in the 21st century. Going forward, I think it is very important for our youth to be gainfully employed. Gainfully employed means jobs that give them satisfaction, not just a livelihood. For that, we have technical training institutes like TAVTA, PVTC. People in the private sector are also trying to do something. I would like to encourage the youth that is unemployed is to get education. Online courses are available the world over these days, and government can spend some money on making these courses available to the youth, so that the youth get trained in education and become teachers for the future generations or for their peers themselves. This concept of education only being in a school and confined to bricks and mortar is not really the best foot forward in the 21st century. We have seen with the onset of the COVID pandemic that we are all having to use technology in ways that we had thought would happen 5 or 10 years down the road, but we all have been forced to do so in business, in our personal lives, and also in our social interaction. So going forward, the positive out of this would be is to use technology cost effectively to train teachers, to train people in jobs that will make them employable in the 21st century. Unfortunately, the skill set that we are developing in this country does not make people employable, so it is necessary to have the nexus between industry, education, and technical training, so that the industries that are developing in Pakistan or will develop in the future, whether they are agro-based or they are based on IT or they are based on real estate or agriculture or any other type of industry, they can specify that we need these trainings and we will employ these people. Another idea that I am quite interested in is to train the youth in nursing. because there is a global shortage of nurses today all over the world because of the aging population in developed countries. They are willing to give visas, they are willing to teach you the foreign language, and they are willing to pay those male and female nurses extremely well, provided they have the right certifications. Today in Pakistan, we do not have international certifications that would allow our younger population to become male and female nurses, obtain those international certifications, and become large remittance earners like the population of the Philippines, for example, has done. So that's the model, I think, that is another cost-effective model of training our youth and exporting them abroad to countries that would need the provision of male and female healthcare workers.
All right. I was, on this note of pandemic that you mentioned, I just wanted to ask you, do you think that the pandemic has taught the world something and the world would come out a different world after the pandemic is over?
Ambreen, I can't talk about the world because I'm not a world authority, but I can only talk about myself and my organization. I'm not the same. Um, I'm I have instituted protocols at home, and we have definitely instituted protocols in the office and in our business environment and on our manufacturing sites. That were there because we subscribe to best practices and follow the HACCP certifications and have those and all the ISO 14,000 and 28,000 certifications. But it has brought in a mindset which has changed the way we think. It has changed social behavior, for example. We all have small signs on our desks, no handshakes, please. So that has changed social behavior. I can't hug my parents because they are in their 90s, and I'm scared that even though I, go home from office and I change and shower, sometimes I feel that's not enough. I may be a carrier. So that has changed the way I behave towards my parents. Same, the way with the rest of the family and so on. So these conscious behavior changes make a person like me, who's a poet and also on the sensitive side, unhappy about what do I have, why do I have to do this, and how long am I going to live like this? Because it brings in an element of irritability, even if this is the new norm. One says, all right, if this is the new norm, then what is the difference between me and a robot with whom I would not shake a hand? Human beings and of human interaction, you take out the emotion from human interaction, then you are treating human beings in the same way as you would treat non-humans in a similar way. If I can't touch my dog or pet my animals, then I feel that I have been constraints have been put upon me which are not necessary. Now, if this is the new norm, to accept this change and to get attuned to this change takes more than 2 months, in my humble opinion. And it's taking me time. Every time I want to hug my parents or pet the dog that my brother has in his compound, I have to tell myself, no, I can't do this because this, I could be infecting myself or I could be passing on the germs and so on. So this whole new mindset that one has to live with has brought in a new dimension of how we are redefining our individual and social behavior. And I think that is impacting people far more than what is happening to the economy. If we talk about what is happening to the global economy, it seems very problematic how the markets have reacted in such a manner so suddenly. You know, and the fall in stock prices or the shortage of certain raw materials. For example, I was just talking to one of my production managers, and he said, there's in the mask there's a certain poly layer that is important because it acts as a barrier between the material that you have on top, which is a non-woven, and there's a PE barrier in between polylaminate or whatever it is. And the price of that film post-COVID was $4,000 per ton. Yesterday, when he checked, it was $94,000 per ton. So there's a lot of irrationality in the markets. Why is it $94,000 per ton? Because everybody wants it, so demand is far greater than supply. Plus, there's an element of profiteering and so on. But what I am not being able to understand is the jitter that it has caused across the planet, and the way global economies seem to be reacting in tumbling. The world has lived through, the influenza, the plagues, and so on. I'm sure there is enough economic data to show how they have impacted all of this. But I think that this digital age and this instant connectivity that we now have because of cyberspace, and the fear that, this pandemic has leashed because human beings thought nothing would ever happen to them on the global level. 7.6 billion people are all living in some kind of fear at the conscious level or at the subconscious level. And I think the reason why we are seeing all these economic reactions and these huge waves, going upwards and downwards and totally erratic, is because this element of surprise and fear at the same time and uncertainty, which we are not used to because, everything was planned out by derivatives as far as the economy is concerned on the global level. Every country makes its 3-year plan, 5-year plan, or a 100-year plan if you're China. And we thought everything would be hunky-dory, but, this is like a spanner in the works. And everybody has been caught unawares.
Absolutely.
And the fact that there was no best way of dealing with it other than facing it head on and doing what WHO guidelines were asking you to do, or UNESCO guidelines were asking you to do. Nobody has a solution, and the vaccine, as they say, is anywhere from 6 weeks to 18 months away, depending on who you believe.
That's right. So most countries were caught everyone was caught unaware, but countries like New Zealand and Germany, with women leaders, have stood out in containing the virus.
Yeah, but I don't think they've shared quite what they did to contain the virus. I don't know if that is public information. I haven't seen it appear in the press. I'm not on social media, so I don't know if they put it out on social media. But I haven't seen it shared, and perhaps it would be nice if Germany and New Zealand would share the information about how do you control a pandemic. Do you isolate people? Do you isolate areas?
Yes, I think this is what they did. Basically, lockdown, early lockdown, and detection and vast testing. So I was just wondering, what do you think are the strengths of our society, since we are a very traditional society in many ways? What do you think are the strengths of our society that we can build upon to take us to the 21st century and become a modern country?
I've been thinking about this, for the last 15 to 20 years. Um, what do we mean by modern and what do we mean by traditional? Because there are set definitions that define tradition and there are set definitions that define modernity. I think in Pakistan we have a mixture of both. We have certain regions, certain people, certain sectors of the society that are fairly traditional, and there are certain sectors of the society that are modern. Which direction the country could take, I think, will happen naturally with the younger generation who will define which way they want to go. I think I have tremendous hope and um, promise I place in the youth of this country who are very talented, creative, when given the opportunity, they are as good as, students at MIT, Harvard, Cambridge, and Oxford. It just depends how much opportunity they are given to excel. And I think if government could create a level playing field where anybody from any walk of life could reach their level of excellence through government, patronage or public-private partnership or with the help of donor agencies as well. I think Pakistan has a very bright future. Just because we have 90 million people under the age of 35 who are bright. I mean, they are not dumb. Um, the stigma that is attached to not having a degree automatically assumes that you are dumb. That's the traditional way of looking at people. But if you talk to the ordinary youth, they are very tech savvy. They have some kind of smartphone. They know how to use that. Um, they are they are on Facebook. They are on WhatsApp. They are on Instagram. They are using technology, and technology is the biggest equalizer. Technology is when it is available to the masses, uh, it it is more democratic than any democracy can be, because it will even out the difference between the elite and the non-elite, because it gives people who have little affordability also a chance to become a participant in the 21st century and therefore define what they want to do with their lives. I think this is an individual decision that every Pakistani needs to take, because we are all committed to the development, growth, and progress of this country. As to where do we want to go as individuals, where do we see ourselves as society, and where do we want to see Pakistan in the 21st century?
Absolutely. So your contribution towards education and arts is well known. Please tell us about your family's goal of setting up a first-class university, LAMS, which is a great contribution to the country. So what did they have in mind?
There were there are three, four basic fundamentals why my father ventured into lumps. One was that there was a dearth of finding management with the right skill set. So that's why LUMS started off as a business school. People, particularly in the industrial sector, whether it was local companies or multinationals, said that the level and skill of training of the graduates who are coming out of public sector universities is not at par with what we want. So we have to, spend a lot of time and money in training them and bringing them up to our level, which naturally slows down the progress of any company or any industry. So that was one major fundamental. And I think that was, to cater to the skill set. Then when, when it started expanding, it was basically to develop it as a center of excellence in the country, and create a academic environment and space where students have the opportunity to excel irrespective of which socioeconomic strata they belong to. The National Outreach Program at LUMS is well known, where people come from, the underprivileged sector of society, but that is not known to the other members who are studying with them in the student body that is studying with them at LUMS. They are provided with complete financial assistance, and today they are in various universities doing PhD in leading American universities like Harvard, MIT, Cornell. Some have chosen to come back. Some have decided to stay on in North America and Europe and London. And now the trend is that a lot of LUMS graduates have gone into business for themselves besides working for the private sector, and have become entrepreneurs. It has an incubation center which incubates new businesses and startups. So the idea basically is to give back to society from, because we feel this country has been very kind to us in terms of enabling us to thrive in our businesses. So that is basically is the idea of LUMS, is to give back.
And it is a great contribution to the education sector and to the country of Pakistan. My next question is about the Naksh School of Arts that you've started. It has done a lot in preserving the art of calligraphy and reviving the art of calligraphy, especially for the young people. What is the format that Naksh School uses, and satisfied with the progress that it has made so far?
So, Naksh is a project of Babar Ali Foundation, and the idea is that it is a art school for the underprivileged, particularly those who live in the inner city, to make them stand on their own two feet. If they don't want to get a degree or an education and they are interested in the arts, this is one way that they can earn a livelihood. And at the same time, it was to revive the old skills that were dying, particularly calligraphy and miniature painting. Now they have calligraphy, miniature painting. They are trying to revive the art of pottery, to make those very thin pyalas, जिसे आप कागजी प्याले कहते हैं, to revive that art. So it's basically trying to preserve the dying traditional arts in a small way.
Okay, so now something basically about you. Your parents encouraged you with the traditional academic education and provided you with the best education. They also initiated you in the arts and culture of the land, and you learned to sing, classical singing. I would like to know who were your, and as I know, the teachers that you had were the very biggest names in the field. Would you like to talk about your teachers in music?
Certainly. I was interested in music since the age of 3 months, because my parents tell me that when they played music, I would as an infant, beat my legs, on the table.
It's amazing.
So that I mean, they introduced me to music at the age of 2 or 3 months. I can't recall that part, but I remember humming and singing with my family, friends, and cousins. Since the age of I would say 4 or 5, and I always had a passion for music. So at the age of 14, I had a start from the radio station. His name was Abdul Haq Qureshi, and Abdul Haq Qureshi Saab was a music teacher who taught me and Tara Sayyed at the same time, but at different timings. Tara used to live in Model Town, so his Malika Pukhraj wanted her to start with Abdullah Qureshi, so she used to learn from him. And then it was my lesson time. And then I was introduced to Farida Khanam by my parents, and I used to. She used to come over to the house and practice, her rehearsals that she was doing for PTV. And I still remember that one day, she was singing Ghalib on PTV, and her famous ghazal Ibn Maryam Hua Kare Koi. So she asked me to play the tune on that because she wanted to practice it. So I made a certain intervention in the tune, and I said, Farida ji, agar aap is tarah se isko thoda sa aise kar de, to it sounds better. So she sang it with that intervention. And then there was Nazim Ali Khan, but these were all intermittent lessons, nothing serious. I mean, I didn't sit down to train for 7 or 8 hours a day because I was more into academics and riding and tennis and swimming. So this was, just a hobby that kept coming along. And then I had the opportunity, I was introduced to Farida Khanam in 1970, and we're still friends. And I knew Madam Noor Jahan in 1972. I went to take her autograph and we became friends. And I suppose the most valuable lesson that Madam Noor Jahan taught me was, she never gave me vocal lessons, but she taught me how to understand music. And she said that, beta yaad rakhna, agar तुम्हारे दिमाग में म्यूजिक नहीं है ना, तो तुम 100 बंदों के या 1000 बंदों के ऑर्केस्ट्रा के साथ भी बेसुरी रहो. So music is important. It is important to have the music notation and the tunes in your head. And once music is in your head, you can sing without musical instruments with equal flair as you would with musical instruments.
It's very important to understand music. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Henna, tell me, you had a very urban upbringing, and you married a person from a very traditional feudal family who was very educated, and I know he was very open-minded and supported you in your career. What is the mix today? If we see the urban and feudal mix in marriages, what are the dynamics in today's society of such relationships?
I don't know. I suppose I could talk a little bit about my relationship with Faisal. I mean, we were, let's say, a visiting couple, because Faisal opted to live in the village because he was totally committed and dedicated to the progress and development of his community. In terms of education in particular, where he set up Imam College, and that is still running from his funds. And then his passion was always politics. He was involved in local body politics, started off, prior to Muin Qureshi's time, when there were local bodies and district councils that had non-party members. He became chairman district council Khanewal. and continued to work for the people of his area, and loved solving their day-to-day problems, whether it was Thana Kacheri, or it was disputes within families, or it was a land dispute, or a social dispute, or a political dispute. He was very committed to doing all of that. And I think the issue is not so much uh, whether he came from a rural background, or I was from an industrial or an urban background. The basic for the institution of marriage, there needs to be a basic understanding. And when he proposed for me and his mother brought the rishta, both Faisal and myself sat in my mother's house with the paper and pencil, literally. A lot of people find this amusing, and wrote down the pros and cons, whether this was a workable idea or not, because it was an arranged marriage. Um, and we both decided that we were open-minded enough. We were both educated in the United States, which enabled us to live a very Spartan life in the beginning. And both of us has a sense of fairness, compatibility, and understanding. So we said, all right, let's give it a shot. We think it will work. So
Okay.
that's how we got married.
What a unique experience, story.
And we both had tremendous trust and faith in each other. I mean, he
That's
never once questioned, that I was working with men. He was never possessive, that I was talking to my colleagues or sitting in them with meetings. You have corporate dinners. They were invited to the house. Whether if Faisal was there, he was part of the dinner. But if he was not there, then those dinners happened without him being there and other family members being there from the business. So there was no element of distrust in us, and there was no hostility. I mean, my home was open to visitors, whether they were political or social, or people who knew him from the village. I did not build a dera like most people do, outside their house or in a certain portion of their house. I said, if if somebody is your friend and they've come to see you, they have to be able to sit in my lounge. Otherwise, please don't invite them to the house and meet them somewhere else.
That's so commendable.
Yeah. So I had an open door policy for anybody who wanted to come to meet us.
That's lovely. Hina, I want to know, you started writing poetry very early in life.
Yes.
Um, Tell us about your interest in poetry.
I started writing Urdu poetry at the age of 9. And
Very.
I started reading poetry, at the age of 7, just because I was interested. And at that time, Firosans used to print, small booklets with poetry couplets from each poet, and I still have some of them. Sauda, Daag, Dard, Mir, Ghalib, Iqbal, and it went on. And then I compiled 2 notebooks of poetry. I must have written about 500 couplets, शेर जिन्हें कहते हैं. And because Faisal was a family friend, one day I approached him and I said, Faisal, मैंने कुछ शेर लिखे हैं, आप जरा एक नजर देख लेंगे. तो फैसाब ने कहा, अच्छा छोड़ जाओ, मैं देख लूंगा 15 दिन बाद. After 15 days, I called and I went to see him. Alice was there and she said, Faiz is not well, so you have exactly 10 minutes. I said, all right, Alice, I will not stay for more than 10. So I sat down. Faisal was sitting, it was the fall season. He was sitting in his veranda drinking tea, and he was smoked a lot, so he was smoking at the same time. So he had my 2 exercise notebooks in which I had written the Urdu verses. And he looked vast into space and said, हाँ 15 साल बाद शायरी आ जाएगी। तो मैंने कहा फैज साहब 15 साल, तो I had just returned from the United States full of independence and vigor.
Oh,
I thought to myself that I will die in 15 years, where am I going to be a professional? So I was very mad at myself, and I sat for less than 10 minutes, I think 6.5 to be exact, and drove on my way home. And I was staying with my parents because I was unmarried. And I reached home and opened the door, and my mother could see that I was very upset. So she said, "Hi, Tanu Faiz ne ki." मैंने कहा फैज साहब ने कहा है 15 साल बाद शायरी आ जाएगी, और मेरा ख्याल है 15 साल बाद मौत आ सकती है, शायरी नहीं आ सकती. So I went into the kitchen, took those 2 exercise notebooks and tore them to shreds. But that was not satisfactory. So I proceeded to burn the manuscript, torn manuscript, on the sui gas ka chula, just to pile it up with heat. And even then I was not satisfied. So चिमटों से सारे वो burnt flakes उठा के डस्टबिन में फेंक.
oh my God. So,
And then I started writing in English.
very dejected.
जी जी. I wasn't dejected. मैंने कहा ठीक है, अब उर्दू में शायरी नहीं आएगी तो फिर अंग्रेजी में लिख लेंगे. Then I started writing in English.
Okay.
And, so you see the beauty of being a bilingual is that you think in 2 different languages. So जब आमद हो, जिसको आमद कहते हैं या इमेजिनेशन या म्यूज जो भी आप कह लें, so जब उर्दू में आमद होती है तो वो सारी उर्दू में ही आती है. I mean the thought process is in Urdu. I don't translate from Urdu into English. और जब अंग्रेजी में आती है तो thought process is entirely in English, and it comes down in English. So then I wrote 9 books in English. I'm working on the 10th one. और उर्दू की 2 किताबें हैं, एक रोशन किनारा और दूसरी है गर्दिश दौरा, और एक तीसरी अब गजलों का मजमुआ है. ज्यादा नहीं है, मेरा ख्याल है कोई 60-70 गजलें होंगी, उस पे आजकल काम कर रही हूँ.
I would really like to thank you. We are delighted to have you today, and thank you so much for taking out time for us. Ladies and gentlemen, the very distinguished Sayyida Henna Babar Ali.
So my grandmother comes from the Fakir Khana, and her father was the ambassador to Afghanistan, and they were also, father and uncle were part of Ranjit Singh's cabinet. And from the parents' side, that is Sayyid Muratab Ali and my Nana and Dada, were sons of Sayyid A&M Wazir Ali, who started with a small canteen shop at Firozpur when they were under 10. When they were not teenagers, my great-grandfather passed away, and my Nana and Dada had to pay off the creditors by working in Lahore, and they used to cycle to Lahore, do odd jobs, and slowly paid off their creditors. They came into contact with somebody who was working in the British India Army at that time, who liked the honesty of the boys, and they became contractors to the British India Army. And prior to partition, India was divided into the civilian contractors had 4 parts of India, and my Nana and Dada, who were both brothers, were given 1 part of the contract. When Pakistan was created, my Dada gave his checkbook to Quaid-e-Azam for the creation of the government of Pakistan, and we do not know what funds were given because that was between him and Quaid-e-Azam. That's how the family started, and it was Uncle Amjad who brought the family into business by seeing new opportunities. And my father went to Sweden, met Auckland and Rousing, and persuaded them to set up a packaging company in Pakistan. It was their idea that Pakistan needed a packaging company, not ours. And by the grace of God, that was our first joint venture, and then many other joint ventures followed. As for my Nani, she comes from the Gakhad clan of the Hazara family of Hazara, and they are descendants of Naushirwan. Her father, Mir Dad Khan, was responsible for sending Field Marshal Ayub Khan to Sandhurst and provided for his education. And I'm heavily influenced by my Nani and my Dadi in my value system, ethics and morality, because I was fortunate enough to have the influence of both in my lives. My Nana passed away much earlier in 1942, and my Dada passed away when I was only in class 2 at the convent. Bye.